Greetings, loyal subjects of the Imperium of Man. I am Librarian Elias of the Adeptus Astartes. I am creating a series of recordings with the intent of educating the general populace of the dangers of the galaxy. All of this information comes from the Lexicanum provided to me by the Adeptus Mechanicus. I will be reading verbatim from their archives. This recording will cover one of the many foes the Imperium has. A traitor space marine known as Typhus. Typhus the Traveler, Herald of Nurgle, is a Chaos Space Marine of the Death Guard Traitor Legion. Typhus was born as Callus Typhon on the Death Guard's eventual homeworld of Barbarus. Typhus was a half-breed, the result of one of the Overlords, a Xenos or mutant species that ruled over Barbarus, taking a liking to his human mother. For this, his mother's fellow villagers drowned her. As a child upon the toxic planet of Barbarus, Callus Typhon was troubled by nightly phenomena over which he believed he had no control. Objects would shudder and smash around him whenever he was frightened or angered, and plants would wither and die under his gaze. These phantom powers troubled him greatly, but he resolved to turn them to his advantage. By the time Typhon reached maturity, he had learned to master the psychic energies that resonated within him each night, a feat of will that impressed his elders mightily. With this act, Typhon became stronger in his resolve to succeed more than any of his peers. When Mortarion defected from the Overlords after witnessing their atrocities, Typhon was the first person the Primarch encountered, and the young child helped lead him to safety. During his early adulthood, Typhus was a champion of Mortarion's early Death Guard. In his war against the Warlord of Barbarus, when the Emperor proclaimed his lost son Mortarion from the poisonous mists of Barbarus and reunited him with the superhuman warriors born from his gene seed, Typhon was amongst those chosen to join their ranks. As he joined the Legion, Typhon's psychic potential was suppressed through training due to the anti-psycho sentiment of his Primarch. Nonetheless, through his rugged talent, Typhon was eventually able to rise to the prestigious position of First Captain. Typhon shared a strong bond with Mortarion, the two being close comrades due in part to their shared origins as outsiders, even among Barbarus. During the Great Crusade, Typhon often proved his abilities to shrug off wounds and effects of hostile actions alike, becoming a legend amongst his warriors. On the planet of Rothric 9, during the eponemic Tribes War of Rothric 9, Typhon managed to withstand a hard blow to the side of his head, and though his blow would have easily killed the lesser man, Typhon was merely driven into a cold rage, and taking up a short iron bar, he killed every tribal warrior around him. In another episode, Typhon saved a squad of Sisters of Silence on the planet of Madrigal by throwing himself onto a malfunctioning crack grenade. In less than a week in the Apothecarian, Typhon had already healed and discharged himself as fit for active duty. According to Typhon himself, he was secretly converted to the worship of the gods of chaos during the Ceremond campaign, receiving revelation at the touch of the hand of an old woman. Typhon's allegiance to chaos predated that of his own Primarch, or of Horus himself. With the help of his new gods, Typhon became first captain of the Death Guard and commander of the battleship Terminus Est. Typhon was not particularly loyal to Mortarion and always wished to travel the galaxy and forge his destiny in the name of the ruinous powers. When Mortarion joined Horus in his rebellion, Typhon helped orchestrate the massacre of loyalist space marines on Isfan 3, when Horus's fleet virus-bombed the surface and killed nearly every living thing above ground. Because Battle Captain Nathaniel Garrow was unable to join his loyalist comrades on the surface, Typhon detailed him to the frigate Einstein, along with Commander Ignatius Grulgor, privately ordering Grulgor to deal with Garrow and his men when necessary. Typhon was furious when the Einstein broke from orbit without joining the virus bombing. Realizing Grulgor had failed, he commanded the Terminus Est in pursuit of the frigate and managed to severely damage the vessel, but was unable to stop it from escaping into the warp. Later, during the Heresy, Typhon led half the Death Guard into a splinter fleet, while Mortarion himself took command of the other. During his campaign of misery and misdirection against the Dark Angels, Typhon's fleet attempted to acquire the Tucholka engine in fulfillment of Nurgle's designs, but was foiled by Lionel Johnson during the Battle of Perditus. Hounded by a Dark Angel's retribution force under the command of Corswain, Typhon's fleet later reappeared in the Ceremon system. There, the Death Guard forces were welcomed by Luther and his fallen angels, a renegade faction of the Dark Angels. Fleeing from Corswain and his Dark Angels, Luther hid the Death Guard fleet while deceiving his former comrades. After being instructed that the time was right by Erebus, Typhon and his forces rejoined Mortarion during the purging of the Loyalist world of Inix, which belonged to a Loyalist side of the Mechanicum. Disappointed that Mortarion had not still yet embraced chaos, Typhon began a scheme to force him to accept the truth. When the Death Guard's fleet embarked for Terra, Typhon framed the navigators of the fleet with evidence that they were agents of Melkador the Sigillite, executing them with his Grave Wardens in the name of protecting the Death Guard. Typhon then assured his Primarch that he could lead the fleet to Terra without their help, using a group of psychic legionaries who were librarians in all but name only. Instead, he led them into a trap, becalming the Death Guard fleet within the warp, adrift, helpless, and at the mercy of chaos. Then came the Destroyer Plague, a disease conjured by Nurgle that takes the form of warp-spawned flies that infest every orifice of the body and lays their eggs in hapless victims. The victims' abdomens then become bloated until they finally burst, unleashing another wave of plague flies to spread the contagion once more. With this, the Death Guard was struck down as the Legion suffered agonies beyond imagination, not even being able to suffer death. Enraged at the trap he had led them into, Mortarion himself confronted his former friend aboard the Terminus Est. Typhon expressed his desire for Mortarion to accept Nurgle's embrace, but instead the Primarch attacked the first captain. Typhon's psychic abilities allowed him to hold off the Primarch's attacks for a time. However, Mortarion eventually prevailed and struck Typhon down with his scythe. However, due to the Destroyer Plague, Typhon quickly came back to life. Mortarion then revealed his trump card, unleashing a deformed Ignatius Grulgor from his confines. Grulgor strangled Typhon to death, fulfilling his oath to Mortarion to kill the first captain. However, Typhon quickly came back to life, and both the first captain and demon laughed as Mortarion realized he had been betrayed. As a reward for his service to Nurgle, Grulgor dissolved and merged with Typhon's body. His body became home to the flies of Nurgle, his armor a hive of pestilence. He then became Typhus, Herald of Nurgle, and the host of the Destroyer Hive. Fully corrupted by chaos, Typhon and the rest of the Death Guard went on to fight for Horus in the Siege of Terra. During the siege, Typhus worked with Perturabo, Abaddon, and Zardu Lyak to summon the influence of Golbak's Utter Blight, a demon prince of Nurgle, into the Imperial Palace in order to subvert the Imperial defenses there. Typhus next took part in the assault on the Colossi Gate against the forces led by Jagatai Khan, Constantine Valdor, and Ralderon of the Blood Angels. Later in the siege, Mortarion informed Typhus that his old foe, Corswain, had landed a force of Dark Angels which had captured the Astronomicon and dispatched the first captain to take it back. After Jagatai Khan led a massive attack at the Lionsgate spaceport and banished Mortarion into the warp, Typhus reappeared and took command of the Legion after rallying key leaders such as Kaifa Morag and Zadal Crosius. Typhus subsequently rallied the Death Guard to retake the Astronomicon before it could be reactivated and lead Rebutaculum and his reinforcements to Terra. Typhus attempted to tempt the fallen angel librarians such as Zariel to join Horus's cause, but to no avail. Typhus then launched a full-scale assault on the Astronomicon. Typhus's forces were able to penetrate the Hollow Mountain, the fortress that held the Astronomicon itself, and seemed to have victory in his grasp despite a determined assault by the Dark Angels and forces of Sigismund. However, Kilo was able to lead a sacrificial prayer amongst the faithful throngs that caused a psychic backlash, which not only threw back the Death Guard, but also reactivated the Astronomicon, leading Typhus to fail at his original mission. Since the Heresy, Typhus has continued to spread the glory of Nurgle across the galaxy, leading a contingent of Death Guard of the Plague Fleet from the Terminus Est. Typhus is known to have laid waste to many worlds and waged many battles in Nurgle's name. Typhus has even traveled to the Garden of Nurgle inside the Warp itself, where he has battled Cornate demons. After killing the leader of this demon army, he took the dog-headed demon's guts and brought them to the Nurgle Palace itself as a gift for Nurgle's cauldron. The Lord of Decay was so pleased by this, that for this great deed, Typhus was honored with being allowed to dip his Man Reaper into the filth of the throne of Nurgle. With this new power, Typhus would be unleashed upon the Imperium to wreak havoc in Nurgle's name. Typhus turned the entire populations of Protheus and Caridinus VII into billions of plague bearers. He destroyed the population of the Shrine World, known as Jonah's World, with a carefully orchestrated pandemic, and orchestrated the Red Flux on the planet of Florins, wiping out the entire male population there. Typhus has also laid waste to the world of Lygeta with a noise plague, where the infected became forced to eternally sing a hymn to the Lord of Decay in 757 Millennium 40. Typhus killed 23 billion people on Hydra Minoris with the zombie plague. In the 13th Black Crusade, Typhus's plague fleet was the first Chaos force encountered by the Imperium. In the Crusade, his forces went on to ravage the Agrippina sector. Typhus also oversaw the infestation and desecration of the holy planet Annunciation by himself. In Millennium 41, Typhus once again attempted to unite the Tuchalka engine, an ancient sentient device and possible warp entity of Old One's origin, with its brother devices, this time in cooperation with the fallen angel Astalan. The two planned to gather the original Fallen with Typhus's own forces to create a new legion known as the Death Angels. However, they were foiled by the Dark Angels led by Azrael and, surprisingly, Cypher, after Fabius Bile stole the Nurgle artifact known as the Ark Cornocontagious from the Scourge Stars, a small empire of diseased worlds that are controlled by the forces of Nurgle that lie to the north of the realm of Ultramar. Typhus pursued the former Emperor's Children Chief Apothecary with his plague fleet in a bid to reclaim it, and with it, the Spider's Head. In the ensuing War of the Spider, Typhus battled not only Bile's Tirata and his Shriven allies, with the Tirata being Bile's experimental warriors and Shriven a fallen Chaos warband. Typhus also had to contend against the Custodes force under Shield Captain Tyvar. Thanks to Bile's machinations, Typhus was unable to corner the Spider and had to withdraw in the face of the Custodes. After the creation of the Great Rift, Typhus launched a major attack on the Caridon sector, besieging the Forge world of Metallica, corrupting it with a computer phage known as the Nemesis Worm. After a prolonged battle, Typhus later appeared as part of Mortarian's armada during the Death Guard invasion of Ultramar. Typhus led a splinter fleet, which terrorized the outer regions of Ultramar. During the invasion, Typhus no longer maintained even slight reverence or respect for his Primarch. The Herald of Nurgle scolded Mortarian and stated that he was closer to the vision of Nurgle. Typhus expressed no desire to work under Mortarion directly, but was willing to take part in the Ultramar campaign simply to further Nurgle's design. Following the battle on Parmenio and the instigation of the War in the Rift, Nurgle lost interest in the war in Ultramar and ordered his forces pulled back to the Scourge Stars to defend them against rival gods. Typhus obeyed the Plague God's orders, informing Mortarion that he would be leaving the Ultramar war zone with substantial amounts of the Death God. The act angered Mortarion, who wished to remain in the region and slay Gilliman with the Godblight, a powerful Nurgle disease that the Great Unclean One, Kugath, created during the Plague War that was said to be able to kill even a Primarch, which it ultimately did in killing Rabute Gilliman, though this was temporary as the Emperor himself unexpectedly manifested and restored the Primarch of the Ultramarines. This is the last recorded instance of Typhus's affairs in the galaxy. Like all unique Space Marines, Typhus has a set of powers and weapons unique to himself. Typhus is a formidable psycho favored by Nurgle, able to call forth both Nurgle's rot, Nurgle's most foul contagion, and the winds of chaos, an ability that lets devout followers of chaos unleash a psychic wave of energy unique to whatever god they pledge to. In addition, Typhus wields the Man Reaper, Lacrimae, which has now been converted into a demon weapon, coated in the vile contagions of Nurgle's own cauldron, as well as wielding his own body as a weapon, as a host for the Destroyer Hive, a horrific plague that manifests as a swarm of insects that continuously pour from the cracks and vents in his Terminator armor. This concludes the information regarding Typhus. More in-depth information regarding him will be recorded at a later date. This is Librarian Elias, signing off.